The grand hall of the Elara Empire's capital glittered with lights from thousands of hovering energy orbs. Delegates from across the galaxy had gathered for the historic summit, where civilizations would discuss alliances, trade, and peace. At the center of it all stood Princess Lyria, the young heir of the Empire. Her tall, graceful figure moved with elegance, her luminescent blue eyes reflecting the shimmering orbs above. She had been trained since birth to handle diplomacy, but nothing could have prepared her for the day that would change her life forever. Among the crowd of dignitaries, a man walked quietly but confidently. He was Dr. Ethan Hale, a human medic representing Earth's small but growing delegation. Humans were still considered novices by many alien races, but Ethan carried himself with a calm assurance. He had trained for years in medicine and crisis response, and he knew that in this place his skills could make a difference, or save lives. The summit began smoothly. Aliens of many shapes and sizes spoke politely to each other. Some marveled at humans, some dismissed them. But Ethan kept to his role, monitoring the health of the attendees and preparing for emergencies, just as he had been trained. Suddenly, the hall shook violently. Energy shields flashed red, and alarms blared across the summit hall. An explosion rocked the walls, sending delegates tumbling. Smoke filled the room. Crystal chandeliers shattered and fell, barely missing the delegates. Panic swept through the hall like wildfire. Princess Lyria was caught off guard. She tried to command the palace guards, but chaos had overtaken the careful order of the summit. Screams echoed around her as the rogue faction, the Voric Raiders, known for their cruelty, stormed the hall with blaster weapons. They moved quickly, targeting anyone in their path. Lyria's guards tried to shield her, but the enemy's strength was overwhelming. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan remained calm. His human instincts took over. He grabbed a med kit and began running from one injured delegate to another, patching wounds, calming fear, and stabilizing people who would have otherwise been lost. His hands moved with speed and precision. To the aliens watching, it was remarkable. A human, physically weaker, far from technologically advanced, was saving lives in a way that their own palace AI systems struggled to manage. Then he saw her. Princess Lyria had been hit by a falling shard of crystal, and her blue skin began to pale unnaturally, a sign of severe internal injury. Her breathing was shallow. Her usual composure was gone. She clutched her side, staggering toward the floor. Her guards tried to carry her to safety, but one was struck by a blaster, and the princess almost fell again. Ethan did not hesitate. He ran toward her, dodging falling debris and laser fire. "Princess, stay with me!" he shouted, kneeling beside her. He quickly assessed her injuries. The palace AI was struggling to interpret her alien biology and stabilize her. The readings were inconsistent, showing multiple organ failures. But Ethan did not panic. He studied her physiology, drawing on everything he had learned about alien species and improvisation. Using a small field scanner and basic emergency supplies, he adjusted her breathing, applied a temporary energy field to stabilize her internal organs, and administered a serum he had synthesized on the spot. It was simple human ingenuity, analyzing patterns, identifying what needed support, and acting fast. Within moments, Lyria's breathing steadied. Her trembling hands relaxed slightly, and her eyes blinked open, focusing on him. "You saved me?" she whispered, voice weak but filled with awe. Ethan nodded, still scanning her vitals. "You're going to be fine. Just hold on." The princess's guards looked on in disbelief. Humans were not supposed to understand alien physiology in such detail, much less act successfully under pressure. Yet here was a human medic, saving their most precious heir when the palace AI could not. But their relief was short-lived. The alarms continued, and explosions rocked the palace again. The rogue faction was moving deeper into the building, searching for the princess. Ethan, realizing the danger, helped the guards lift Lyria onto a hover stretcher. Together, they navigated the smoke-filled corridors, avoiding the attackers as best as they could. The princess tried to speak, but the pain made her pause. She looked at Ethan, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, an emotional spark she did not expect. No human had ever been this brave, this clever, or this caring, and yet here he was, risking his life for her. Ethan guided them into a smaller wing of the palace, a secure medical area rarely used except for emergencies. He quickly barricaded the doors and activated emergency shields. The princess was placed on a medical table. As he worked, she struggled to speak through the haze of pain. Why, humans?" she asked. Her voice trembled. "You are fragile. Why risk so much?" Ethan smiled softly. "Because it's the right thing to do. Life matters no matter whose it is." She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. She was a princess, accustomed to protocol and etiquette, but this simple act of compassion was foreign to her. She had been raised to expect loyalty from her guards and obedience from her people, not selfless courage from an outsider. Outside the medical wing, the sounds of battle continued. Ethan worked quickly, stabilizing her further. He improvised with alien medical devices, combining them with Earth-based techniques. Slowly, Lyria's vitals improved. Her breathing became steady, her color began to return, and she was able to sit up slightly, supported by Ethan. The princess could not stop staring at him. In her world, humans were underestimated. They were considered simple, fragile creatures, incapable of heroism in the face of advanced alien technology. But this human had proven them wrong. He had saved her life when even her advanced empire systems were failing. Ethan, noticing her gaze, said, "You'll need to rest, princess. But right now, you're safe." For the first time since the attack began, Lyria allowed herself to relax. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from pain alone, but from the overwhelming realization that a human had risked everything for her life. The princess, known for her pride and composure, was left in a vulnerable, raw state, and it was all because of him. In that moment, a quiet bond formed between them. She did not know this man well, and she had only just met him, yet she felt a connection built on trust, bravery, and empathy. It was a feeling she had never expected from a human, and it stirred something inside her that she could not yet name. As the battle raged on, Ethan prepared a plan. They could not stay in the palace forever. Reinforcements would arrive, but the rogue faction might still strike. He instructed the guards on how to move the princess safely to the palace escape pods, while he continued to monitor her condition. Princess Lyria watched him, a mixture of admiration and awe in her eyes. I have never seen such courage," she whispered. "Never from a human." Ethan smiled. "Humans can surprise you, sometimes in ways you don't expect." For a brief moment, the chaos of the attack faded. The princess's tears reflected the lights of the emergency orbs, sparkling like tiny stars. And in that glow, a human medic and an alien princess shared a moment that neither of them would ever forget, a moment of bravery, trust, and a bond that would shape the future of their worlds. But outside the safety of the medical wing, the rogue faction was still moving. This was only the beginning of a larger struggle, one that would test courage, ingenuity, and the strength of unlikely alliances. And for Princess Lyria, the memory of her tears, and the human who caused them, would stay with her forever. As Ethan prepared the princess for transport to safety, he could not help but think. Humans had a lot to learn, but moments like this proved one thing clearly. Human courage, ingenuity, and compassion could stand tall even among the stars. And in a galaxy full of powerful aliens and advanced technology, sometimes That was enough to save a life. The escape pods shimmered in the moonlight as they hovered above the shattered palace grounds. Princess Lyria sat on a reinforced medical chair, her body still weak from the injuries she had suffered during the attack. Her breaths came in slow, uneven waves, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a thin blanket around her shoulders. Beside her, Dr. Ethan Hale checked the readings on a small, portable scanner. His brow was furrowed in concentration. Even in the safety of the pod, his mind remained alert, analyzing her condition, ensuring no new complications could arise. The other guards and attendants were quiet, still recovering from the chaos outside. Many of them glanced at Ethan with a mixture of suspicion and awe. Some had always believed that humans were incapable of handling alien crises. Now, after witnessing him save the princess with his own knowledge and courage, their perception had shifted, but slowly. Trust, especially for beings like the Alara, was not given lightly. Lyria's glowing blue eyes were fixed on him. "I still don't understand," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the pod engines. "Why would you risk your life for me? For anyone?" Ethan paused, meeting her gaze. There was no pride in his eyes, only calm determination. "Because it's what anyone should do," he replied. "Life matters. It doesn't matter whose life it is." The princess shook her head slightly. She had been raised to expect such words from her own guards or advisors, but rarely from outsiders, especially humans, who her people often dismissed as simple and fragile. Yet here was Ethan, proving that humans could act with intelligence, courage, and compassion when it mattered most. For a moment, silence fell between them. Lyria realized that she felt something unfamiliar. It was a sense of gratitude mixed with awe. She had always believed in strength measured by power, by weapons, or by command over others. But now she saw that true strength could come from knowledge, quick thinking, and a willingness to risk everything for someone else. The pod suddenly lurched. Alarms blared as energy shields activated automatically. Ethan's hands moved instantly, adjusting the pod's stabilizers while monitoring Lyria's vitals. "We're not out of danger yet," he said, his tone calm but serious. "The attackers might track us." Lyria nodded, though her body still trembled. "Then we must move quickly," she whispered. Her voice carried both determination and a hint of fear, a combination that made her seem both regal and human at the same time. The pod glided smoothly into space, leaving the debris of the palace behind. Ethan guided the vehicle toward a nearby moon that had been designated as a temporary refuge. It was uninhabited, a place where they could regroup and plan their next move without interference. Inside the pod, Lyria tried to sit upright, but winced in pain. Ethan immediately adjusted the medical supports. "Take it slow," he advised. "Your body needs time to recover. You've been through a lot." She looked at him, her expression softening. Humans are remarkable," she said. "I underestimated your kind. I thought you were fragile." Ethan shook his head. "We may be physically weaker, but we adapt. We think, we improvise, and we care. That can make a difference." Lyria's gaze lingered on him, her blue eyes reflecting the dim light of the pod. She felt something stirring inside her, a sense of trust that she had rarely offered to anyone outside her closest advisors. For the first time, she felt that humans were not just outsiders, but allies capable of bravery, cleverness, and kindness. As the pod approached the moon's orbit, the princess asked quietly, "Do you think they will follow us?" Ethan studied the readouts carefully. "It's possible. They're determined, and they want control. But if we reach the surface and set up defenses, we can hold them off." He paused, then added with a faint smile, "Besides, humans have a few tricks they've learned over the years." Lyria allowed herself a small, weary smile. It was the first time she had smiled since the attack. The experience had shaken her deeply. but it also opened her eyes to possibilities she had never considered. She had always relied on her people, her guards, and her empire's technology. Now she realized that sometimes help could come from the most unexpected place, a human medic. The pod touched down softly on the moon's rocky surface. Outside, the barren landscape stretched for miles, illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby star. Ethan led the princess carefully out of the pod, supporting her as they moved toward a small hidden shelter he had identified in his mapping device. Inside the shelter, the atmosphere was quiet and safe. Ethan activated a field that stabilized the environment and provided basic medical support. Lyria settled onto a reclining seat, still exhausted but beginning to feel safer. "You've done more than save my life," she said softly. "You've shown me that humans can be brave in ways I never imagined." Ethan nodded, adjusting her medical monitor. "Bravery isn't about strength or size. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Anyone can be brave if they choose to be." The princess leaned back, her hands folded over her chest. She thought about the events of the day, the explosion, the chaos, and the moment Ethan had reached for her when all seemed lost. She remembered the sharp pain, the fear, and then the sudden calm as he worked to save her. It was a memory that left her trembling, not from pain, but from emotion. For hours, Ethan tended to her injuries, monitored her condition, and explained his improvised methods. Lyria listened closely, fascinated not only by his skill but by his perspective. He saw problems as puzzles to solve, as challenges that could be overcome with intelligence and creativity. She had never encountered anyone like him before. As the hours passed, the princess began to relax. She allowed herself to speak more openly, asking questions about Earth, about humans, and about Ethan's life before he had come to the stars. Ethan answered patiently, sharing stories of his training, his experiences in human hospitals, and the ways humans had adapted to survive in harsh environments on their own planet. Lyria found herself laughing softly at some of his anecdotes, a sound that felt foreign to her own ears after a day filled with terror. For the first time since the attack, she felt a sense of comfort and even joy. She realized that trust could be built not only through words, but through actions, and Ethan's actions had spoken louder than any declaration of loyalty. Outside, the moon remained quiet, but Ethan knew better than to let his guard down completely. He had set up a series of sensors and alarms to detect any approaching threats. The rogue faction might attempt another strike, but this time they would not catch the princess unprepared. "You've done so much for me already," Lyria said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know how to repay you." Ethan smiled gently. "No repayment needed. Just take care of yourself. That's enough." The princess's eyes glistened with tears. She had been raised to command and control, to rely on strength and technology. But now she understood that courage, intelligence, and compassion could come from unexpected sources. She had witnessed it firsthand, and it had changed her forever. As night fell on the barren moon, the two sat in quiet reflection. Ethan continued to monitor her vitals, while Lyria gazed at the stars above. She thought of her home, of her people, and of the fragile yet courageous human beside her. A new bond had formed between them, a bond built on trust, bravery, and respect. In that small hidden shelter, far from the grandeur of her palace and the chaos of the attack, Lyria began to understand a simple truth. Sometimes, the smallest and seemingly weakest beings could make the biggest difference. Humans, with their ingenuity and courage, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the mightiest of civilizations. And for Princess Lyria, this human medic was no longer just a helper or a stranger. He had become a symbol of hope, bravery, and the unexpected strength of humanity. She would remember his actions, his calm in the face of danger, and his unwavering care for her life. Outside, the moon was silent. Inside, a princess in tears and a human medic shared a quiet moment of understanding, a moment that would mark the beginning of an extraordinary alliance, one that could change the course of galaxies. Ethan glanced at her one last time before settling in for a brief rest. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we make sure you're ready to return home safely." Lyria nodded, her tears now of gratitude rather than fear. She had survived the first day of chaos, and she knew, in her heart, that with a human like Ethan by her side, she could face whatever challenges the universe might throw at her next. The moon's surface was quiet under the faint glow of distant stars. Princess Lyria had slept fitfully, her body still recovering from the injuries she had sustained during the attack. Even in sleep, her mind could not let go of the chaos of the palace siege, the shouts, the explosions, the blinding lights of energy shields, and the moment she had nearly fallen. But the thought of Ethan Hale, the human who had saved her, brought her comfort. She had never imagined that a human could be so brave, so clever, so capable of protecting a life far beyond their own. Ethan, meanwhile, had barely slept. He monitored the sensors he had installed around their temporary shelter, watching for the slightest sign of the rogue faction's pursuit. His mind raced, calculating possible approaches, escape routes, and defensive strategies. The human mind was small compared to the Elara's advanced technology, but it was flexible, capable of thinking in unexpected ways. And that flexibility, combined with courage, often turned the tide in desperate situations. "Princess," Ethan said softly, waking her from her light rest, "we need to move. I've detected multiple ships entering the system. The attackers are tracking us." Lyria rose slowly, steadying herself against the edge of the shelter. "Already?" she whispered, fear and determination mingling in her voice. How do you know?" Ethan pointed to a small holographic display. Red dots marked the incoming vessels, moving with precision toward the moon. "These ships are fast, but they rely on standard tracking algorithms. We can use that against them." The princess watched him closely, curiosity and awe blending with her lingering fear. She had relied on her empire's most advanced security systems all her life, but this human, with only portable devices and instinct, had detected the enemy before even her palace AI could respond. Ethan motioned for the princess to sit while he prepared the escape pods. "We need to leave the surface and lure them into space. That way we can split their forces and have a better chance of survival." She nodded, leaning heavily on the support he offered. She was still weak, but she trusted him completely. Ethan had earned that trust with his actions, not words. He had shown her that humans, though physically smaller and often underestimated, could match and even surpass alien ingenuity in moments of crisis. The escape pods lifted off silently, hugging the moon's jagged surface to avoid radar detection. Ethan guided them through narrow valleys and rocky formations, using the terrain to mask their escape. Princess Lyria watched him work, her admiration growing. He moved with calm precision, making split-second decisions that kept them safe while conserving energy and resources. Minutes passed, and the red dots on the scanner grew closer. The rogue faction was relentless. Ethan spoke quietly, more to himself than to the princess. "If they follow a straight path, we can predict their movement. If we adjust our trajectory, we can separate their fleet. Then we can handle them in smaller groups." Lyria leaned forward, curiosity overcoming her weakness. How do you think like that?" Ethan smiled faintly, not taking his eyes off the controls. "Humans survive by thinking fast. We adapt to new problems with whatever is around. We don't always have the best technology, but we have creativity and courage. Those two things can be just as powerful." The princess looked at him, realizing that the qualities he described were what had saved her life. His courage in the palace, his quick thinking under pressure, and his willingness to act when all others hesitated. That was the kind of strength her empire had never fully appreciated in humans. Suddenly, the scanners blared. Two of the rogue ships had split from the main fleet, moving faster than predicted. Ethan's fingers flew over the controls, adjusting the pod's speed and trajectory. "They're trying to flank us," he said. "We need to use the asteroid belt nearby to our advantage." The escape pod surged toward the dense asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks that hung silently in the void. The rogue ships fired, energy beams cutting through space, but the rocks blocked much of the assault. Ethan guided the pod with remarkable precision, dodging each threat while keeping Lyria stable and secure. "This way," he instructed, pointing to a narrow gap between two giant asteroids. "If we can get through here, their larger ships won't follow us safely." Lyria clutched the armrest, heart pounding, but she trusted him completely. She had no other choice, and besides, she had seen what humans were capable of. With Ethan in control, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope, a recognition that courage could come in the smallest, most unexpected forms. The pods maneuvered expertly through the narrow passage, the rogue ships hesitating at the entrance. Ethan had calculated their hesitation perfectly. Using a small energy pulse, he created a temporary diversion, drawing the attackers toward a different path. Two ships followed the pulse, leaving the others behind. "There," Ethan said quietly. "Now we can handle them separately." The pods split into two teams, each guided by Ethan's careful calculations. Using quick improvisation and the moon's terrain, he orchestrated a series of maneuvers that disabled several of the rogue ships without any direct confrontation. Rocks were used as shields, energy pulses as decoys, and the rogue ships were systematically trapped or misdirected. Princess Lyria watched in astonishment. She had been trained in strategy and warfare her entire life. Yet even she could not have predicted such clever tactics. The human beside her was proving that adaptability and ingenuity could outmatch sheer firepower. After hours of careful navigation, the escape pods finally emerged from the asteroid belt. The rogue ships that had pursued them were scattered, damaged, and disoriented. The remaining fleet was now behind them, struggling to regroup. Ethan guided the pods to a safe distance, allowing the princess to rest while he monitored the situation. "We're not out of danger entirely," he said, "but we've bought ourselves some time. They'll have to rethink their approach, and that gives us an advantage." Lyria's hands trembled slightly as she reached for his. You saved us again," she whispered, voice filled with gratitude and awe. "I don't know how humans can be so clever, so brave." Ethan looked at her, his expression calm. "It's not about being clever or brave. It's about using what you have and thinking ahead. Anyone can do it if they try." She studied him, the weight of her emotions pressing down. He had saved her life, guided her through danger, and now protected her across space. She realized that humans were not weak or simple. They were resourceful, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary courage. As the escape pods drifted further from the battle, Ethan began planning their next move. They needed a safe location to hide and regroup, and he had identified a nearby space station, abandoned but still functional. It was risky, but it offered supplies, shelter, and a chance to repair the pods. "Can we reach it before they find us again?" Lyria asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes, but we need to move carefully. We'll use stealth and unpredictability. If they can't predict our path, we stay safe longer." She leaned back, exhausted but filled with respect. "I never thought I'd trust a human like this," she admitted softly. "But now, I know humans can be more than I ever imagined." Ethan smiled faintly. Sometimes the smallest and least expected beings make the biggest difference. The pods continued their journey, weaving through the debris of a small asteroid cluster to remain hidden. Lyria's thoughts drifted back to the palace, to the chaos and destruction she had witnessed. She thought of her guards, her advisors, and the countless others who had fought bravely but relied too heavily on technology and protocol. And then she thought of Ethan, the human who had acted when others hesitated, who had saved her with nothing but knowledge, courage, and quick thinking. Hours passed, and the pods finally approached the abandoned station. It loomed silently, a relic of past conflicts, its docking bays empty and dark. Ethan guided them inside, carefully navigating through the rusted corridors and activating basic power systems. "This will be our base for now," he explained, helping Lyria settle in a secure chamber. "We can repair the pods, rest, and plan our next move." The princess looked around, taking in the quiet emptiness of the station. It was far from the grandeur of her palace, but it was safe, and it was a place where she could recover. She turned to Ethan, eyes glistening. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've done more than save my life. You've shown me a new way to see humans, and perhaps the galaxy itself." Ethan shrugged lightly. "Just take care of yourself. That's enough for me. But I promise, we'll get you home safely, and we'll make sure your people understand that humans are more capable than they think." Lyria nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. She had survived another day, not just because of technology or her own skills, but because of a human's courage, quick thinking, and unyielding care. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this human, Ethan Hale, was unlike anyone she had ever met. As night fell over the station, the two of them sat in quiet reflection. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly across the sky, but inside, a princess and a human medic shared a bond forged in danger, trust, and admiration. And while the rogue faction still threatened them, Lyria felt a renewed sense of hope. With Ethan by her side, humans had proven that even the smallest, most underestimated beings could make a difference across the stars. And the galaxy, she realized, was far more full of possibility than she had ever imagined. The space beyond the abandoned station stretched endlessly, a dark expanse dotted with stars and drifting asteroids. Princess Lyria stood at a reinforced viewport, her luminescent blue eyes tracing the faint outlines of the rogue faction's fleet in the distance. Her body had regained some strength, but her mind was sharp and alert. She had witnessed firsthand the bravery and ingenuity of Dr. Ethan Hale, the human medic who had saved her life, not once, but twice. And now she realized that they faced the greatest challenge yet. Ethan entered the observation room, his expression calm, though his eyes scanned every readout. "We've confirmed their course," he said. "They're moving toward the Titan system. I've found a location that gives us a tactical advantage, the ring of asteroids around Titan. It's dense, irregular, and perfect for an ambush." Lyria's gaze hardened. "Then we'll make our stand there. But do you really think humans can face such overwhelming numbers?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Humans have a habit of surprising people. We adapt, improvise, and act when others hesitate. That can turn the tide, even against odds that seem impossible." The princess felt a spark of confidence. She had relied on the strength of her empire and advanced technology all her life, but she now understood that intelligence, courage, and creativity could outmatch raw power. And with Ethan by her side, she knew they could face whatever came next. The fleet moved closer to Titan's ring. The rogue faction's ships were large and heavily armed, their engines glowing ominously in the darkness. Ethan's escape pods, now repaired and upgraded with energy shields, hovered silently among the asteroids. He had spent hours preparing, studying the layout, calculating trajectories, and positioning the pods to maximize both defense and attack options. "Here's the plan," Ethan said, pointing to a holographic map of the asteroid belt. "We'll use the terrain to separate their ships. The larger ones can't navigate through the smaller gaps safely, so we'll lead them into traps using decoys and energy pulses. Smaller ships will follow, and we can handle them one group at a time." Lyria studied the display, impressed. "It's clever, very human," she said, smiling faintly. "I think I'm beginning to understand your kind better." Ethan chuckled softly. "Sometimes the simplest solutions work best, and humans have a tendency to think outside the expected paths." The rogue fleet appeared over the horizon, their weapons charged and ready. Ethan's fingers moved swiftly across the controls, activating energy shields and deploying decoy drones. Each drone emitted false energy signatures, creating illusions of movement that tricked the enemy's sensors. The first wave of ships entered the asteroid field. They hesitated, scanning the terrain for obstacles. Ethan had calculated every possible path, every potential trap. As predicted, several of the larger vessels collided with asteroids or were forced to slow, allowing the escape pods to flank them from unexpected angles. Lyria watched, holding her breath as energy pulses flew from the pods, temporarily disabling the rogue ship's engines. She had trained in strategy her entire life, yet even she could not have anticipated such precise, creative tactics. Ethan's ingenuity was saving them, and she could not help but feel awe for the human who had defied every expectation of his species. The rogue fleet regrouped, trying to reorganize for a second assault. Ethan adjusted the pod's positions, moving them closer to the larger asteroids to create natural cover. "We need to split them again," he explained. "Divide and conquer. Their coordination is strong, but it breaks under unpredictability." Lyria's hands clenched the edge of her seat. She had never felt such tension and excitement at the same time. She realized that courage was not only about facing danger, it was about thinking, planning, and acting with precision when every second mattered. And Ethan embodied that courage fully. As the second wave entered the asteroid belt, Ethan initiated another human-inspired maneuver. He used the smaller asteroids as temporary shields, bouncing energy pulses off them to disable enemy sensors. The rogue ships were confused, unable to predict the next move. One by one, they were forced into traps, their engines damaged, their formation broken. "Keep going," Lyria said quietly, awe and excitement in her voice. "You're doing it!" Ethan glanced at her. "This isn't about me. It's about using every advantage we have. Stay focused and trust the plan." The battle intensified. The rogue faction had expected a straightforward chase, but Ethan's strategy made them vulnerable at every turn. He moved the pods in a carefully timed sequence, drawing some ships into narrow corridors between asteroids while leading others into areas where their weapons were less effective. Lyria, now more confident, began to participate actively. She suggested maneuvers based on her knowledge of military tactics, and Ethan incorporated them into his plan. Together, they created a seamless combination of human adaptability and Elara strategic thinking. One rogue ship broke through the initial defenses, heading straight for the princess's pod. Ethan acted instantly, redirecting energy from a nearby shield to intercept the attack. The ship's blaster beams ricocheted harmlessly off the shield. Lyria's heart raced, but she could see the calm determination in Ethan's eyes. He had anticipated this move. "You'll be safe," he said, his voice steady. "Just stay focused on your role." The rogue fleet's coordination continued to falter. Smaller ships collided with each other in the dense field, and the larger vessels struggled to maintain control. Ethan used the chaos to push the pods into advantageous positions, creating a bottleneck where the enemy could be neutralized one by one. Hours passed, each second filled with careful calculations, daring maneuvers, and precise actions. Lyria could hardly believe her eyes. Humans were often underestimated, but this one human was turning the tide of battle against a superior force. She felt admiration, gratitude, and a deep respect for his courage and intelligence. Finally, the last wave of rogue ships hesitated, realizing that their tactics had failed, their engines were damaged, their fleet scattered, and their advantage lost. Ethan used the opportunity to issue a final series of energy pulses, disabling their remaining weapons and leaving them stranded among the asteroids. The battlefield grew quiet, save for the hum of the pod's engines. Lyria exhaled deeply, her hands trembling with relief and excitement. She looked at Ethan, tears glistening in her eyes. You did it. You saved us. Again, she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. We did it together. You helped too. Courage and quick thinking win battles no matter who you are. The princess reached for his hand, a gesture of gratitude and respect. She had witnessed humans in action, quick, adaptable, and fearless, and she knew that they were far more capable than her people had ever imagined. Outside the station, Titan's ring was calm again, the rogue faction's ships scattered and incapacitated. Ethan monitored the area, ensuring no immediate threats remained. Lyria rested beside him, her energy spent, but her spirit lifted. Humans, I underestimated you, she admitted softly. I thought you were small, fragile, unprepared for space and battle. But now I see, you are more than that. You are clever, brave, and capable of so much. Ethan nodded, brushing a hand over a console. Humans survive by thinking ahead, adapting and acting when it matters most. Sometimes the smallest beings make the biggest difference. Lyria's gaze softened, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to truly relax. The danger was not completely over, but they had proven that intelligence, courage, and teamwork could triumph over overwhelming odds. She realized that humans, though often underestimated, had a unique combination of resourcefulness and bravery that made them invaluable allies. As night fell over Titan's ring, the princess and the human medic sat together, reflecting on the events of the day. They had faced incredible danger, relied on each other, and survived through courage and ingenuity. A bond had formed, stronger than any protocol, stronger than any hierarchy. It was a bond built on trust, respect, and shared triumph over adversity. Ethan glanced at Lyria, who was quietly observing the stars. Tomorrow, he said softly, we plan how to return you home safely. But tonight, rest. We've earned it. Lyria nodded, her tears now of gratitude rather than fear. She had survived not just because of technology, strategy, or her empire's power, but because of a human's courage, intelligence, and unwavering care. And she knew that Ethan Hale had changed her understanding of humans forever. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for the possibilities of a future where humans and the Alara could work together, side by side, to face whatever challenges the galaxy held. And in the quiet of Titan's ring, surrounded by asteroids and the calm of space, the princess and the human medic shared a moment of reflection, victory, and unspoken promise. Together, they had survived the impossible, and together they would face the universe, undaunted, united, and stronger than anyone had expected. The battle at Titan's ring was over. The rogue faction had been defeated, their fleet scattered and disorganized, unable to regroup. Princess Lyria looked out from the viewport of the repaired escape pod, the asteroid field now quiet and calm. Her injuries had mostly healed, thanks to Dr. Ethan Hale, the human medic whose courage and ingenuity had turned the tide of every crisis they had faced. For days, Lyria had witnessed Ethan act with precision and bravery. He had saved her life, guided them through enemy fleets, and outwitted an entire rogue faction with clever tactics. The princess had grown to trust him completely, not as a simple ally, but as someone whose intelligence and heart could match or even surpass the expectations of her empire. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice carrying both admiration and relief, "I can hardly believe how you've done all this. You've saved not only my life but the future of my people." Ethan smiled faintly, scanning the readouts as they approached the Alara Empire. "It wasn't just me. It was quick thinking, preparation, and understanding the environment. Humans can be underestimated, but we have one advantage. We adapt." Lyria nodded, considering his words. She had underestimated humans herself, but now she understood. Their courage and resourcefulness could achieve what even the most advanced technology could not. And for her people, this realization would change everything. The escape pod docked safely at the Imperial Space Station orbiting the Alara capital. The once vast halls that had been threatened by the rogue faction now glimmered with the light of repaired systems and returning order. Palace officials and guards moved quickly, ensuring that Princess Lyria was safely escorted to her private chambers. Ethan followed closely, carrying his medical equipment. Though his work was nearly complete, he knew that her condition still required careful monitoring. Lyria looked at him, a faint smile on her face. "I will never forget what you've done, Ethan Hale. My people will hear of this, and they will understand the truth about humans." The princess's statement carried more weight than she realized. In the Alara Empire, humans had been seen as minor, fragile beings, good for observation, trade, or minor assistance. Yet here was a human who had outperformed advanced Alara AI, saved her life multiple times, and orchestrated strategies that outmatched the rogue faction's fleet. This was a moment that would shift perspectives forever. "Your people are strong," Ethan said quietly. "They just need to see that humans can match them in ways they didn't expect." As Lyria rested, palace officials and commanders gathered. Reports were being filed, documenting the heroic actions of the human medic and his improvised strategies. Murmurs of disbelief and admiration spread quickly. Many Alara had assumed humans were weak, fragile, or unpredictable. Now, they were forced to reconsider. Intelligence, courage, and ingenuity had proven more powerful than preconceived notions. Princess Lyria summoned the council for a private meeting. She spoke with calm authority, recounting every detail of the attack, the chase across space, and Ethan's crucial role. She described how his quick thinking had saved her life, how his understanding of tactics had guided them through danger, and how his courage had inspired trust and hope. "My people," she said, her voice steady, "we have underestimated humans. Today, I have witnessed a human act with courage and intelligence that equals any Alara warrior or strategist. We must acknowledge their value, their bravery, and their potential as allies." The council was stunned into silence. Few could recall anyone speaking so openly of a human in such terms. But Lyria's conviction was undeniable. She had seen it firsthand, and her word carried authority. Word spread quickly throughout the empire. Humans were no longer viewed as fragile outsiders. Stories of Ethan Hale's bravery circulated, inspiring new respect and appreciation for humanity. Diplomats and officers began reconsidering the role of humans in galactic affairs. What had once been a species considered minor was now recognized for its ingenuity, courage, and problem-solving ability. Lyria requested a private audience with Ethan in her chambers. He entered quietly, still carrying his medical gear. She smiled warmly, her expression a mixture of gratitude, respect, and deep admiration. "You've changed my people's view of humans," she said softly. "And you've changed my own understanding as well. I underestimated what courage and clever thinking can do." Ethan shook his head. "I only did what anyone would do. But I'm glad your people now see the truth. Humans may be small, but we can surprise others when it matters most. The princess's gaze softened, and tears formed in her eyes. Not tears of pain this time, but of gratitude and awe. You saved me. You risked everything for someone you barely knew. That means more than words can express. Ethan smiled faintly, his humility genuine. It's what people do for each other. Courage, care, and quick thinking can make a difference. That's enough reward for me. For the first time in days, Lyria allowed herself to fully relax. She had survived, not just because of technology, not just because of her empire's strength, but because of a human's courage, ingenuity, and empathy. She had seen what humans were capable of, and she could never forget it. Outside, the empire's capital began to rebuild. Palace systems, damaged during the attack, were repaired, and life slowly returned to normal. Yet the memory of the attack, and the story of the human who had saved the princess, would be remembered for generations. It became a symbol. Humans were capable, brave, and adaptable. They could hold their own in a galaxy of advanced civilizations. Ethan worked quietly, checking her vitals one last time and preparing to leave. Lyria stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. Ethan, you have my deepest gratitude, but more than that, you have my respect. Humans will never be the same in the eyes of my people. He looked at her, calm but proud. Thank you, Princess. That means more than I can say. She nodded, tears still glistening. You've shown me that courage and clever thinking are just as important as technology and strength, and you've shown that humans, though underestimated, can be heroes among the stars. Outside, the stars shone brightly over the restored capital. A new era of respect and understanding had begun. Humans were no longer seen as minor players. They were allies, capable of bravery, intelligence, and action that could influence the fate of entire civilizations. The princess's advisors watched as she spoke of Ethan with admiration and gratitude. They began to understand that humans were more than they had assumed, that one human medic had not only saved a princess, but had reshaped the Empire's perception of an entire species. Lyria turned to Ethan one final time. You have left a mark on my life and on my people. I will not forget it, and I will not forget you. Ethan gave a small smile. Then I guess humans and Ilara have a long future together, one where we can face the universe side by side. The princess's tears glistened again, this time not from fear or pain, but from admiration and hope. She had seen the best of humanity, courage, ingenuity, and selfless bravery, and she would carry that memory forever. In the quiet of the restored capital, a princess and a human medic shared a moment that transcended species and expectation. The galaxy had witnessed courage, intelligence, and heart triumph against overwhelming odds. And the story of that day, the day a human medic saved an alien princess, would inspire generations to come. Ethan looked out at the stars, reflecting on what had happened. Humans had proven their worth, not through brute force or advanced weapons, but through ingenuity, quick thinking, and unwavering courage. The galaxy was wide, unpredictable, and full of danger, but he knew now that humanity could make a real difference. Princess Lyria turned toward the stars as well, tears drying on her cheeks. She had survived the impossible thanks to a human's courage and brilliance, and she knew that the bond forged in those dangerous days between a human medic and an alien princess would shape the future of the galaxy in ways no one could yet imagine. Together, they had faced overwhelming danger, survived impossible odds, and changed perceptions forever. Humanity had earned respect among the stars, and for Princess Lyria, the memory of those tears shed in gratitude, relief, and admiration, would remain a reminder of the courage that could be found in the most unexpected beings. The universe stretched out before them, vast and full of unknown challenges. But with trust, courage, and clever thinking, humans and their allies could face it together. And somewhere deep in her heart, Lyria knew that the day had not only saved her life, it had shown her a new way to see the galaxy, and a new way to see humans. For Ethan Hale, the human medic, it was simply another day of doing what needed to be done. But for the princess and the Alara Empire, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where humans were no longer underestimated, where courage was recognized across species, and where a single human's bravery could inspire a galaxy. And so, amid the restored halls of the Alara capital, the story of a human medic and an alien princess came to a close, not with an ending, but with a beginning. A beginning of trust, respect, and unity across the stars.